The Broadcom Story, a tale of two CEOs. In 2016, Henry Samueli, co-founder and former CEO of Broadcom, announced that he would retire after 37 years of leading the company. His replacement, Hock Tan, had a very big challenge ahead of him. Keep Broadcom relevant in an era where it was no longer cool to be a chip manufacturer. After all, when it comes to chips, the industry is dominated by giants like Intel, AMD, and Nvidia. So how did Broadcom become such a giant itself? Well, let's find out in today's video. Broadcom was founded in 1991 by Henry Samuel and Scott A. Broadcom. The company's first product was a 16-bit PCI card for ESA buses called the Netlink 82586. The card provided a fast path between PCs running Microsoft Windows and servers running Unix. This allowed businesses to connect their older equipment to newer systems without having to make major changes to their software. That made the card a hit with corporate customers. But there was a problem. Each card took 4 months to manufacture, which meant that Broadcom couldn't scale its production quickly enough to meet demand. So the company decided to outsource production to Taiwan Semiconductor Manufacturing Company, or TSMC, one of the largest and most respected semiconductor companies in the world. By outsourcing, Broadcom was able to reduce its lead time to just 6 weeks. And because TSMC used leading-edge technology, Broadcom's cards were some of the fastest on the market. The move also gave Broadcom more flexibility. For example, if it wanted to introduce a new feature on a card, it could do so without having to invest in expensive new manufacturing equipment. This agility helped Broadcom grow rapidly during the late 1990s, but the dot-com bubble burst in 2001, and with it, demand for network cards plummeted. With revenue disappearing overnight, Broadcom laid off 30% of its workforce and focused on developing products for the enterprise market. One of these was the BCM4450, a chip that provided fiber channel connectivity for storage area networks. Broadcom sold the chip to server makers who integrated it into their systems. These systems were then sold to large businesses that needed to store and manage massive amounts of data. The BCM4450 was a success, but it wasn't without its challenges. For example, Fiber Channel is a proprietary protocol owned by a consortium of storage vendors. That meant that Broadcom had to pay royalties to the consortium every time it shipped a BCM4450 chip. Nevertheless, by the mid-2000s, Broadcom had become one of the leading suppliers of fiber channel chips. But as storage needs grew even larger, Broadcom realized that it would need to develop a new chip. Meanwhile, the consumer electronics market was going through its own revolution. Smartphones were becoming more popular by the day, and that meant that there was a growing demand for wireless chips that could connect them to cellular networks. Samsung, LG, and other manufacturers were already producing smartphones, but they needed chips that could handle the growing amount of data that these devices generate. Broadcom had the technology to meet that demand, but it lacked the manufacturing capacity. Again, Broadcom turned to TSMC, which had developed a new 28nm process that was perfect for the task. This chip was called the BCM20735, and it was a huge success. Soon enough, Broadcom was shipping millions of the chips every year, and its revenue started to skyrocket. By 2015, Broadcom was a huge company with a market cap of over $30 billion. But as we mentioned at the start of this video, it was no longer cool to be a chip manufacturer. That's because the industry was dominated by giants like Intel, AMD, and Nvidia, who had huge fabs all over the world. Broadcom didn't have the money to build its own fab, so it outsourced all of its manufacturing to TSMC. This meant that Broadcom was at the mercy of TSMC's pricing and availability. If TSMC raised prices or couldn't meet demand, Broadcom's bottom line would suffer. And that's exactly what happened in 2015. TSMC raised its prices, and Broadcom had to pass those costs on to its customers. As a result, Broadcom's profits fell and its stock price collapsed. When Henry Simuli stepped down as CEO in 2016, it was up to Hock Tan to turn things around. But how could he do that when Broadcom was just a chip designer? What Hock Tan needed was a way to add value to Broadcom's chips so that they couldn't be easily replaced by competitors. He found that opportunity in software. Software is hard to replicate and can differentiate a product in the market. It also has high margins, which means that it can boost a company's bottom line. So Hock Tan set about developing software for Broadcom's chips. But this wasn't easy because Broadcom had been outsourcing software development to companies like Microsoft and Linux. For years, Broadcom didn't have its own software engineers. When Hock Tan tried to hire them, he was told to look elsewhere because there weren't any software engineers available in the market. All the best ones were already working for companies like Google, Facebook, and Amazon. That meant that Hock Tan had only two options. He could either wait until the software engineers came available, or he could go to where they were and hire them away. Hock Tan chose the latter. He offered jobs to hundreds of software engineers at Google, Facebook, and Amazon. Some accepted and moved to Broadcom, while others stayed put. But Hock Tan didn't give up. He kept trying to recruit software engineers from these companies, and eventually he succeeded. Today, Broadcom has thousands of software engineers on staff, and its software is a key differentiator for its products. In fact, many of Broadcom's biggest customers now buy its chips and software together as a package. That made Broadcom much more valuable to its customers, and it helped the company grow rapidly in recent years. Broadcom's main business today is providing infrastructure software for data centers. Its products help companies manage their networks, storage, and security. In addition, Broadcom provides infrastructure software for smart homes and cities. Its software helps devices communicate with each other, and it also helps to improve the efficiency of public services like transportation. Finally, Broadcom provides infrastructure software for the automotive industry. Its software helps cars connect to each other and to external systems. This improves safety, and it also makes driving more enjoyable. What's next for Broadcom? Well, Hock Tan is constantly on the lookout for new acquisitions that will help the company grow. In fact, he's already made several big acquisitions since taking over as CEO. These include CA Technologies, a provider of IT management software, and Symantec, a provider of security software. It's likely that Hock Tan will continue to look for acquisitions as a way to grow the company. But he faces stiff competition from private equity firms who are flush with cash and eager to buy big tech companies. There are also challenges on the horizon. For example, the European Union is considering a new law that would force companies to use open-source software. This could hurt Broadcom since a lot of its software is proprietary. Another challenge is the rise of containerization. This is a new way of developing software that is becoming very popular. It could threaten Broadcom's business model, since it relies on selling software licenses. But like he always does, Hock Tan is already thinking about these challenges and looking for ways to mitigate them. In fact, he's already started investing in containerization technologies. Only time will tell how well that will work. So what's the secret behind Hock Tan's success? There are probably several factors at play. First, he's been willing to make bold moves, like hiring hundreds of software engineers away from Google and Facebook. Second, he's been willing to invest in new technologies, like containerization. Third, he's been able to keep Broadcom profitable, despite the challenges in the chip industry. And fourth, he's been able to grow the company both organically and through acquisitions. We may never know for sure, but we can be sure that Hock Tan's leadership has been a big part of Broadcom's success. In conclusion, Broadcom is a great example of a company that has been able to succeed by focusing on what it does best and by constantly innovating. When the company was founded, it was clear that it didn't have the resources to compete with the big chip manufacturers. But that didn't stop Broadcom from trying. The company focused on developing chips for niche markets, and it was able to grow rapidly as a result. However, as the chip industry became more competitive, Broadcom needed to find a way to differentiate itself. The company found that opportunity in software. Software is hard to replicate and can add significant value to a product. So Broadcom began investing heavily in software development. Today, software is a key differentiator for Broadcom's products. Now it's time for you to watch another video.